Hi there, I'm Erica CHAFKIN, the founder and chief empowerment officer, otherwise known as the CEO of the website datewithpower.com, where you can find powerful practical solutions to your biggest dating struggles. Today, I'm going to talk to you about something that many women struggle with, and that is how to talk to men about the C word, commitment, without scaring them away. Because let's face it, if you're looking for a serious committed relationship, it's important to find a man who's looking for the same thing. That way, you won't waste months or years of your life in a relationship with someone who will never give you the lifelong commitment you desire. But the problem is, if you start interrogating a guy about what his relationship goals are or where your relationship with him is headed, he's probably going to get freaked out. He'll think you have an agenda or that you're trying to pressure him into committing to you. But luckily, there are ways to talk to men about commitment in marriage without freaking them out or scaring them away. And in this video, I'm going to show you how. Whether you're looking to get married or just to have a committed relationship without tying the knot, you'll learn valuable tips and strategies on how to talk to your partner about commitment, so you can easily find out if he shares your relationship goals. Since commitment means different things at different stages of your relationship, I've divided this presentation into 3 parts. Part 1 is discovering his relationship goals. This is typically done during the first few weeks of dating. At this early stage, your goal is to determine if he's looking for a committed relationship, not whether he's looking to commit to you per se. And the reason I say that is because during the first few weeks of dating, you and he are just getting to know one another. There's no way he could possibly know that early on if he wants to commit to you or not. However, it's still important to gauge his overall attitude towards marriage and commitment, so at least you'll know if the two of you share the same relationship goals. Because after all, why waste months or even years of your life dating someone who has no intention of committing or settling down anytime soon? Part 2 is finding out if he wants to date you exclusively. This is a conversation you typically have 2 to 4 months into your relationship, depending on how well you know him. By that time, you and your partner hopefully know each other fairly well. You're seeing each other on a regular basis, and you probably have a good sense of whether you want to date him exclusively. The goal of this phase is to find out whether he wants to date you exclusively. Part 3 is finding out if he wants to marry you. This is a conversation you probably want to have with your boyfriend after dating him for at least 1 year, maybe longer. At this point, you want to find out if he envisions spending the rest of his life with you. Because if he doesn't, you have to rethink whether you want to stay in a relationship with someone who's never going to give you the lifelong commitment you desire. In all 3 parts, I'll give you strategies and scripts you can use for talking to your own partner about commitment in marriage. You don't have to follow them word for word. You can tweak them as you see fit, depending on your own unique dating situation. As you listen to this video, I encourage you to keep an open mind and be willing to try out some of the strategies you're going to learn about today. Because very often, that's how real transformation occurs, when you're willing to make some shifts in the way you approach the whole dating process. So let's start with part 1, discovering his relationship goals. If you just started dating a guy, I found that the easiest way to discover his relationship goals is to bring up the subject of relationships within a much broader context. When you do this, 9 times out of 10, he'll reveal the type of relationship he's looking for as the conversation progresses. You won't have to eke it out of him or force the issue. It'll just come out naturally during the course of conversation. You see, when you bring up a delicate subject like commitment within a much broader context, he's not going to feel like he's being interrogated. You'll be able to find out how relationship-minded he is without putting him on the spot or making him feel uncomfortable. In doing so, you create a safe, non-threatening environment in which you can talk to him about sensitive, touchy-feely topics like relationships, marriage, and commitment without freaking him out or scaring him away. And the beauty of this technique is that there's nothing sneaky or manipulative about it. You're simply engaging your partner in a casual conversation about an issue that's very important to you, commitment. So here are a few ways you can do this. The first is to have the wedding, engagement, or bridal shower conversation with your partner. If you recently attended someone's wedding, engagement, or bridal shower, that could be a great segue into a conversation about marriage and commitment. Now, I know that with COVID around, you probably haven't gone to any weddings, engagement parties, or bridal showers lately. Therefore, consider this to be a strategy you can use in the future when the pandemic subsides and hopefully comes to an end. Here's an example of how the strategy works. Suppose you recently went to a friend's wedding. You can start out by telling him all about the wedding, where it was held, how many people were there, where your friend is going on her honeymoon, and any other details you want to share. Then see how he responds. If he doesn't say much, ask him if most of his friends are married or still single and see where the conversation goes from there. If he still doesn't drop any hints about his views on marriage, ask him in a casual but flirtatious tone if he ever sees himself getting married someday. For example, you can say something like, "So, do you ever see yourself getting married someday?" Then pay very close attention to what he says and how he says it. What I've found is that when a man truly wants to get married, he will unequivocally answer yes to that question without any hesitation. But if he doesn't believe in marriage or isn't sure whether he ever wants to get married, he will convey his uncertainty through his words and body language. For example, he might hem and haw a bit or seem uncomfortable with your question. Either way, you'll quickly find out how he feels about marriage. Notice here how you're not asking him whether he wants to marry you. Rather, you're trying to gauge his feelings about marriage itself. And the best part is, you're doing it within the course of a casual conversation about your friend's wedding. That'll make him feel more relaxed and will create a safe, comfortable space for him to talk about marriage and commitment. It's not like you're putting him on the spot or asking him out of the blue if he wants to get married someday, because that would probably freak him out. Now, if you don't have any wedding, engagement, or bridal shower stories to share with your partner, there are other strategies you can use instead, one of which is the online dating conversation. If you met your partner online, you can find out what his relationship goals are simply by asking him a few questions about his online dating experience. Casually begin by asking how long he's been on the online dating site and what he thinks of it so far. Be wary if he starts bashing his exes, because that shows he still has some unresolved anger and baggage from his past that'll eventually carry over into your relationship with him. Next, ask him what type of relationship he's looking for. But when you do this, make sure you're asking from a place of curiosity. For instance, you can say something like, "I'm just curious, what type of relationship are you looking for?" One thing I've found is that by prefacing your question with the words, "I'm just curious," it makes it sound more like a casual question than an interrogation, and as a result, he'll feel more comfortable talking to you about his relationship goals. If you're dating a man who's divorced, then it's very simple to find out if he's marriage-minded. If you met him online, you can say something like, "I noticed your profile said that you're divorced." Or if you didn't meet him online, but you know he's divorced, you can say, "I know you had mentioned that you're divorced." Then say, "If you don't mind my asking, how long have you been divorced?" After he responds, casually ask him, "Do you ever see yourself getting married again, or was once enough?" Now notice when I asked him that question, I did so in a casual, almost joking tone of voice. The reason for doing that is to keep things light and make it easy for him to open up to you about whether he wants to remarry someday. Now, of course, if you're not looking to get married, then you can always rephrase the question by saying something like, "So after being divorced for X number of months or years, are you looking for a serious relationship or just to date casually?" Either way, his response will tell you whether he wants to have another committed relationship. Now, as you probably guessed, the online dating conversation can only be used with people you meet online, and the divorce conversation can only be used if you're dating a divorced person. But what happens if you didn't meet your partner online and he's not divorced? In a case like that, there's another approach you can use, the relationship goal conversation. Here's how it works. Let's assume your partner's name is Mark. One day when you're out with Mark and things are going well, you're both having fun and enjoying each other's company, you can say something like this. I don't know about you, Mark, but as much as I enjoy being single, it would sure be nice to have someone to share life's many adventures with. While I definitely enjoy going out and meeting new people, I feel like I've reached a point in my life where I'd like to settle down and get married someday, provided, of course, I'm with the right person. How about you? What are you looking for? And then listen to what he says. If he tells you he's looking for a long-term committed relationship, then at least you know you're both on the same page. If, on the other hand, he says he's not looking to settle down anytime soon, then that's a clear sign he's not the right guy for you. In which case, it's best to say sayonara and move on. Now, if you're not looking to get married but still want a serious relationship, you can always modify the end of the script a little by saying something like this. I feel like I've reached a point in my life where I'm looking to have a long-term committed relationship, provided, of course, I'm with the right person. How about you? What are you looking for? Again, you're not asking him if he wants to have a serious relationship with you. All you're doing is telling him your relationship goals and asking him what his are. And you're doing it in a way that won't make him feel pressured or uncomfortable. So in part 1, our goal was to find out if he's looking for a committed relationship. We weren't focused on whether he wants to commit to us, per se. But after a few months of dating, you probably want to know where your relationship is headed and if he wants to get serious with you. Now, in an ideal world, he'll come right out and tell you he wants to get serious and date you exclusively. Or he'll demonstrate it through his actions by seeing you on a regular basis and taking down his online profile and introducing you to his family and friends. But as we all know, we don't always live in an ideal world. Sometimes we have to take it upon ourselves to find out where things stand, especially if he's giving us mixed or confusing signals. After all, you can't just date in limbo forever. After a few months, you have the right to know where your relationship is headed, if anywhere at all. But if you're going to talk to him about where your relationship is going, you've got to do it in a way that won't freak him out or make him feel pressured to commit. And the best way to do that is to follow these 4 steps. Step 1 is to start out on a positive note. Tell him how much you enjoy being with him and spending time with him. Step 2 is don't pressure him to commit. Tell him you're aware that everyone has their own timetable when it comes to relationships and commitment. That'll make him feel safe and shows him that you're not trying to high pressure him into committing to you. Once you've created a safe, pressure-free environment, you can move on to step 3, which is to ask him where your relationship is headed. And then step 4 is to listen to his response. By starting off on a positive note and creating a safe space where he doesn't feel pressured, he'll be able to talk to you about where your relationship is going without getting freaked out. Here's an example of how to use this 4-step process in a real-life dating situation. We'll use our old friend Mark again from the previous example. You know, Mark, I really enjoy being with you. It's hard to believe we've been dating for 3 months already. As you know, I'm looking for a long-term committed relationship, but at the same time, I realize that everyone has their own timetables for when it comes to things like relationships and commitment, which is why I'm curious to know what you think of our relationship so far and where you see us headed in the future. Hopefully, he'll say that he's really into you and wants to date you exclusively and see where things go. But if he doesn't, then at least you know where you stand, in which case you can cut your losses and move on to someone else who does want to commit his heart and soul to you. Sure, it might hurt to walk away, but you know what hurts even more? Wasting months or even years of your life waiting for a guy to commit when he has no intention of ever doing so. To me, there's nothing more frustrating than that. Now on to part 3, which is finding out if your partner wants to marry you. This is something you do after dating him for at least a year or longer. I've found that the best way to do this is to follow the same 4-step process I just described, except in step 3, you're going to ask if he sees the two of you getting married at some point in the not-too-distant future. I actually did this when I was dating my husband for over 2 years and wanted to know if we were headed for marriage. Even though I had the conversation with him back in 2015, I still remember it like it was yesterday. Just to give you a little background, I had been dating him for a little over 2 years and loved him very deeply. I thought he was a fantastic guy who'd make a fantastic husband, but there was just one little problem. He didn't seem to be doing anything to take our relationship to the next level. Even though he had told me on a few occasions that he wanted to get married, I was starting to wonder when that day would ever come, because he never talked about the two of us settling down, buying a house, and building a shared life together. Even though we spent all our weekends together as well as 1 or 2 weeknights, our relationship didn't seem to be progressing very far beyond that point. I felt like our relationship was stuck in a rut, and it was really starting to frustrate me. I have to admit, I didn't say anything to him at first because I was afraid that if I brought up the subject of marriage, he might get scared away or tell me he wasn't ready for it yet. So for several weeks, I kept quiet about the issue, but in the meantime, my frustration level continued to grow. Finally, I reached the point where I couldn't stand being in limbo any longer. I had been dating him for well over 2 years, and the time had come for us to talk about the future of our relationship together. I knew I wasn't going to give him an ultimatum, because ultimatums never work. Instead, I decided to discuss the matter with him in a loving, heartfelt way that wouldn't make him feel pressured at all, and so I used the same 4-step process that I mentioned earlier. I initiated the conversation one night after dinner while we were relaxing together on the couch. I figured that would be a good time for us to chat about our relationship since he seemed to be relaxed and in a good mood. So I snuggled up against him, held his hands in mine, and said to him in a soft, loving tone of voice, "You know, honey, I was just thinking about how much I love you and how much you mean to me. It's hard to believe we've been together for over 2 years already. I can honestly say that this is the best relationship I've ever had, and I feel really blessed to have you in my life." So that was step 1. I started out on a positive note. Luckily, he responded by telling me he felt the same way, so at least our conversation was off to a good start. Then I looked into his eyes and said, "You know how I told you in the past that I'm looking for a long-term relationship that eventually leads to marriage?" To which he responded, "Sure, I know getting married is very important to you." I was really relieved to hear him say that because at least he still remembered my relationship goals. I then told him, "Well, I know everyone has their own timetables when it comes to things like marriage and settling down, which is why I'm curious to know if you ever see the two of us getting married and settling down together in the not-too-distant future. I'm not trying to pressure you into proposing or putting a ring on my finger. I just want to know what your long-term intentions are for our relationship. Whatever you tell me is okay, so please don't feel pressured in any way." Do you see how I brought up the subject of marriage without pressuring him to commit? That way, I knew he'd feel more comfortable talking to me about where our relationship was headed. I then stopped talking so he could respond. My heart must have been beating 1,000 times a minute in anticipation of what he was going to say. Without any hesitation, he looked me in the eye and said, "You know, I'm really glad you brought this up because I've been wanting to talk to you about it for a while." What he said next made me the happiest woman alive. He told me that he did want us to get married and settle down together. He admitted he'd been wanting to talk to me about marriage for the last few months, but he was just waiting for the right time. I laughed and told him, "Honey, when it comes to discussing marriage, any time is a good time for me." I was so happy and elated, not to mention relieved, that we both wanted to get married. Having that conversation was the best thing I ever did for my relationship and my own peace of mind, because at least now I knew that we were both on the same page as to where our relationship was headed. Now, on the other hand, if he had told me that he didn't want to get married and settle down, I would have bid him farewell and walked away in a heartbeat. And I say that with 100% certainty because I knew in my heart that I wanted to get married. And if it wasn't to him, then it would be to someone else, even if it meant having to go back out there and start dating all over again. Would I have been happy about it? No. Would it have been hard walking away? Of course. Would I have felt sad and depressed afterwards? You bet. Would it have been a painful breakup? Absolutely. I would have felt devastated. But would I have eventually recovered, moved on, and found someone else? You better believe it. If he wasn't able to make my dream of getting married come true, then I had complete faith that somehow, somewhere, I'd meet someone else who'd make that dream into a reality someday. Like a true empowered dater, I refuse to abandon my relationship goals and settle for anything less. And it's my sincere hope that you'll be willing to do the same in your own love life. Please don't ever compromise or give up on your relationship goals, because your desire for a long-term committed relationship is a beautiful, precious goal, and you should never feel like you have to abandon that goal just because the guy you're with isn't looking for the same thing. In a case like that, the solution is to find another guy, not to abandon your relationship goals. When you have these types of conversations with your partner about commitment, he'll hopefully tell you that he's looking for a serious, long-lasting relationship. But if for any reason he tells you what you don't want to hear, like he only sees you as a friend, not as a girlfriend, or he's only looking to date casually, or that he never wants to settle down and get married, then I hope you'll have the courage to walk away and move on. Because the reality is, he wants what he wants and you want what you want. And if the two of you don't want the same thing from your relationship, then it's best to just part company and go your own separate ways. I know it sucks, but you know what sucks even more? Being with someone who'll never give you the lifelong commitment you're looking for. If you really want to date with power, you've got to be willing to walk away from the guys who don't want to commit to you so you can find the ones who do. I know it's not easy, but it's the only way you'll ever experience the healthy, long-lasting relationship you desire. After all, how can you possibly meet Mr. Right when you're stuck in a relationship with Mr. Wrong? Instead of wasting months and years of your life dating someone who will never commit his heart and soul to you, you're better off cutting your losses and moving on so you can find someone who truly loves and adores you and wants to make you his own. I want to conclude with a message of hope because I know how hard it is to stay optimistic, especially if you've dated a lot of guys who are players, jerks, and commitment phobes. Although you might think that good quality men went extinct with the dinosaurs, I want to reassure you that that's definitely not the case. Contrary to what you may believe, good quality men do in fact still exist. Now I know some of you may be thinking, yeah, right, where are they, on another planet? And if that's how you feel, believe me, I get it. I struggled with dating for over 10 years and endured more than my fair share of heartache, misery, and despair. But even after going through 7 failed relationships, I still maintained a ray of hope that somehow, somewhere, I'd meet the right person and get married someday. And you know what? I eventually did. Granted, it definitely took some time, but it was well worth the wait because my husband is a wonderful man and I'm so grateful to have him in my life. Which is why I urge you ladies to keep the faith even if you feel like your love life has hit rock bottom. Believe that the right guy is out there and that someday the two of you will meet. Because what I've found is that your beliefs greatly influence your reality. If you believe that most men are liars, scumbags, and commitment phobes, then that's probably what you'll end up experiencing in your love life. Whereas if you choose to believe something more empowering, like, even though I haven't met the right person yet, I'm confident he's out there and that someday our paths will cross, think of how much more hopeful and optimistic you'll feel when you date. And when you show up on dates feeling hopeful and confident, men will want to keep dating you and eventually commit to you. 'Cause believe me, there are guys out there who are looking to commit. And the best way to know if a man is commitment-minded is to have these types of conversations with him so you can find out what his relationship goals are. So again, ladies, please keep the faith and never give up on your dream of finding lifelong love. Last but not least, if you haven't done so already, please head over to www.datewithpower.com/donate and pay $10 or whatever amount you can afford, since this is a paid event. Every dollar you give helps cover expenses related to my meetup group and Date with Power website, in addition to the monthly cost of using Zoom to host these events. While I do try to offer as much free content as possible, I occasionally have to host paid events such as this one to help cover my costs. I sincerely appreciate and thank you for your support, because your contributions help keep this group going so I can continue empowering women to succeed at dating. I wish you a fantastic day ahead, and whenever you date, always remember to date with power.